This week signifies the beginning of the period of the Shovavim. Shovavim. Something whose source is basically Kabbalistic. Lots of secrets behind it. But the most simple understanding of what it's all about is that we begin the Parsha Shemos, the enslavement of our ancestors in Egypt, going through the Parshios of the redemption, the revelation at Sinai, the Torah, Mishpatim, and then Truma and Tetzaveh this year, which is the building of the Mishkan. Vasuli mikdash v'shachanti b'socham, whereby the Jewish nation became a people amongst whom Hashem dwells. What is this process all about? This is the process of the building of the Jewish nation. The study of it is understanding what it means to be a Jew. We begin at Shemos. Pesach time, so many ask the question. We speak of how indebted we are to Hashem for having redeemed us from Egypt. But He sent us there in the first place. In fact, Hashem does this all the time. He makes us trouble and then takes the credit for redeeming us. Don't do me any favors. Why did He take us down to Egypt? And it was foretold. This was not a punishment. This was foretold. Avraham Avinu at the very beginning. We're going to be strangers in a strange land. Va'avadum va'inu osam. We'll serve them. They'll torture us. So at the Pesach Seder, what do we eat? Days of Beis HaMikdash, we had the Pesach sacrifice, the lamb. But other than that, what do we have? Bitter herbs in the poor man's bread. We're actually celebrating. We're celebrating our enslavement. We're celebrating the bitterness. We're celebrating the poverty. We thank Hashem for all of it. In Aleinu, we speak of Shelo Asanu Kagoyei Haratzos. We were not made like the other nations. We were made as strangers in a strange land. We became the Jewish nation. In fact, in this week's parsha, for the first time, we are referred to as Am B'nai Yisrael, the Jewish nation. Where did that happen? In Egypt, as strangers. In that very same sentence, in the context, we're being accused of trying to take over Egypt from the ethnic Egyptians. Hashem turned us into a nation under slavery. So you've got to understand, this is the transformation of regular human beings into Jews. What is the first element? The first element is to beat the connection to the world of Gashmius, the material world, to beat that out of our hearts. Our heads, our hearts. Of course, we're part of this world. But what is the essence of the Jew? What do we identify as? We identify with our neshamas. Human beings naturally identify with their bodies instinctively. The Jew, first and foremost, sees himself as a soul. How did that happen? Took generations of torture, slavery, dehumanization, where this world had very little to offer them. Our connection to the material world, something associated with torture. And then everything was replaced with something else. Miracles. Miracles, Hashem revealing himself. Of course, that was what we got out of Egypt. But it was a whole new life. It was an existence that was just miraculous. First, the plagues that got us out of there, the splitting of the sea, existing in the desert. Initially, it was the leftovers of the Seder that they had in Egypt. That's what they lived on for a month. And then their whole existence in the desert. Everything was miracle. Food came from heaven. Bread was bread from heaven. Water from a rock. Divine protection. Their clothes were washed and ironed as they wore them. It was a whole different existence. An existence that was all spiritual. The revelation at Sinai. Every single Jew experienced prophecy. Every single Jew experienced prophecy, heard Hashem speak. And then the building of the Mishkan. Understanding what that meant. Mishkan, then the Beis HaMikdash. That was a place where Hashem's presence was apparent. Hashem would speak to Moshe Rabbeinu from over the Keruvim. Any major issue facing the nation, they could approach Hashem with it, the Kohen with his Urim V'Tumim. They'd get an answer. What is a Jew all about? The reality to the Jew is his spiritual state. Quality of life is measured by one's relationship with Hashem. The more real your relationship with Him, the more real your understanding of what Hashem is. The more you're alive. The physical world, it's a means, often a nuisance. But that's not where our hearts are at. Traditionally, two Jews meet, what they talk about? The Parsha, the Dav. Someone's got a Chiddush, some novel approach to something. What did Jews live by? What's our essence? Our essence is spiritual. This transformation took place by way of the process of Shirut Mitzrayim, of the enslavement, going through all of the miracles, going through divine revelation, and then the building of the Mishkan, the Shekhinah among us. A Jew is a different creation. If you just see yourself like everybody else, you missed it. You're not being true to yourself. The problem is that our souls do dwell in our bodies. And our instincts still speak very loudly. And it's a struggle. And although it feels great when you connect, it's so difficult to keep remembering that. These are the weeks that we study, get into ourselves once and for all. Our instincts were created to give us challenge, but that's not us. We are not our instincts. We are our neshamas. And they yearn for a relationship with Hashem. It's teaching ourselves to ignore when instinct calls and says, you want this, you need this, you've got to. To remember, that's not me. I yearn for greatness. I yearn for more and more perfection, for spirituality, for wisdom, for a higher form of life. That's what this period is all about. And every parsha adds to it. This is the week to really understand that Hashem gave us a miserable experience in this world so that we know this world is not for keeps. He did that in Egypt, and he did it so many other times in Jewish history. It began then because that's when we were made into a nation. But I guess there's a need for maintenance when we forget. Now, Hashem is all good. Why does he make this world so difficult? Because it's not for keeps. Because it's not the real thing. What he created us for is beautiful. Calls for hard work, sure, but it is so beautiful. How long can you maintain such a state? As long as you're willing to work for it. The Rambam in the Guide in the Morah speaks of how intelligent people will never have a discussion about what you had for dinner last night. They don't talk about food. They don't talk about anything. anything physical. Because you know that's not what it's about. You talk meaning. You talk wisdom. That's a Jew. You know, deep down, Jews are always looking for meaning. Every Jew. The problem is, in a confusing world, people end up in all sorts of places looking for meaning. In the name of the search for meaning, so many Jews today have found the answer to be hide your Jewish identity. Be embarrassed of being a Jew. What's meaningful? To so many, it's this universalism that approves of anything except for the Orthodox Jew. The Jew needs meaning. Yes, we've been at the forefront of every movement for social justice there's ever been. We need meaning. That's what we're like. But in search for meaning, people grab onto whatever they find. We got to go back to the source. What is it that our physicality was replaced with? A relationship with the Creator. Primarily through His wisdom. Building ourselves, making ourselves greater through His wisdom. Being closer and closer to Him, more and more like Him. It's, yes, discovering and identifying with our neshamas. That's what it's all about. So, this is what Shovavim is. Study the Parshas and remember, a Jew is not just another human being. A Jew is the one who identifies with his neshama and sees everything else as means, secondary, and possibly even trivial. Let's make the most of it. Let's grow. And the greater you become, the more you will have to share with our fellow Jews.